Good morning. It is 11:11 a.m. on Sunday, August 28th, 2016. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. So, as discussed yesterday, today I am beginning a series. And so that series is going to be a rewatch and discussion of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the cartoon series, not the movie, which I still have not seen and probably won't ever. So, I love this show deeply, and I love the sequel series as well. And a couple of years back, I decided to try to do blog posts to kind of recap every episode, and then felt I kind of fell away from doing that. I set it up for myself as being a little more work than I was able to manage at the time. But, as a just a discussion on one of these videos, I think I could keep that up. So the basic idea here is that I'll talk about each episode and will generally avoid spoilers from later in the series so that it will be friendly to, people who are watching it for the first time. And so if you haven't watched the show, it's available for free streaming on Amazon Prime, which, if you don't have Amazon Prime, is kind of a good deal. I don't know why you wouldn't. Anyway, Season 1, Episode 1, The Boy in the Iceberg. So, this is the first episode, of course, and it has a lot of work to do because everything about this series is new. I mean, lots of times with shows like this, you have to introduce the characters, but the setting might be straightforward or whatever. But in this case, not only do we have an unusual fantasy world, but we also have a lot of history, a lot of off-screen action, and a lot of characters to introduce, which is a lot of work for a first episode. And it starts smaller than it will eventually grow to, but I think it does a remarkable job of setting up, first, the tone of what the show is going to be like, but also establishing what we need to know at this point anyway for the history and the world building, while also hinting at the potential for a lot more, which is metaphorical for icebergs, right? Well, there's a lot beneath the surface. So we begin by introducing Katara and Sokka. They are brother and sister, belong to the Southern Water Tribe, and seem to be they live in a icy, snowy South Pole type environment, and we meet them as they're fishing. And although boys versus girls and sibling rivalry is certainly not new territory for a cartoon show to cover, I was surprised right away when Katara actually uses the word sexist in her yelling. She basically feels that he is, diminishing any contribution that she can make on the basis of her being a girl. And that is sexist, but for a cartoon to actually use the word is just struck me right away when I first watched it as an indicator that this show is maybe a bit more sophisticated than some. Even at the same time that it is fully willing to make use of slapstick humor. Sokka is alternately, drenched with water, covered in bison snot, dumped in the snow, and all these sorts of things. But of course, so we have to establish, because these are two of our main characters. So we have Katara, who is a water bender, which is just kind of a water-based elemental magic. But she's frustrated because there's no one left at her tribe to teach her how to waterbend, because almost all the adults have gone off to fight in this war, and it's not clear when or if they will ever come back. And so she is intrigued by this power, but untrained and knows it, and is frustrated because she doesn't have anyone to teach her. Meanwhile, her brother Sokka, while he is, dismissive of the abilities she has, is also kind of taking on a lot of responsibility for this tribe, because there's, all the adults are gone. He's kind of taken it upon himself to be the man of the tribe, so to speak. And that includes trying to train and drill little kids to, be able to protect the village if possible. He builds a watchtower for their little village. And he's out there, fishing for food for everybody. And so, he's doing his own thing, even though he is certainly a very sarcastic and character, and doesn't always take other people seriously. He takes himself pretty seriously. But, he's also doing a lot. He's taking on a lot of responsibility. And so the two of them, in their arguing, Katara's waterbending unleashes a hidden, glowy, impressive magic iceberg that has a little kid in it with glowy eyes. And then when we meet this kid with glowy eyes, his eyes stop glowing, and his first question is, "Will you go penguin sledding with me?" And so thus we meet Aang, who, obviously has something going on, what with being buried in a magic iceberg and glowy eyes and all that, and yet seems to not think that's very important. Seems very happy-go-lucky. He is much more interested in exploring all of the different facets of this new world, and he seems very happy-go-lucky and carefree, except that he is obviously hiding something. And we see him have sort of a nightmare of what got him into the iceberg, which is that he seems to have been running away from something. And given that we've been given we've been told that the history of this world that they live in is that there's this avatar who is just one person who is able to bend all four elements: fire, earth, air, water. And that avatar disappeared, and there's been war ever since. So, it's not a huge leap to conclude that Aang might well be the avatar, but has been frozen in this ice for 100 years. And when he discovers that that's how long he's been in the ice, that's one of the first things that kind of breaks through Aang's veneer of happy-go-lucky kid. And so there's some clear pain beneath the surface for this character, even though he also does seem to really be in his nature to find around the edges of tragedy. He is able to look for and see the best in people, and to find joy where it can be found, even when it seems like it might be a serious situation. But there's lots of hints, as I mentioned, that there's something else beneath the surface there. And so then we also introduce our two primary antagonists for this point in the series. We have Prince Zuko and his uncle Iroh, who are on honor bound to search for the Avatar, who from their perspective is just nowhere to be found, has been missing for 100 years. They don't even know what he looks like or where he might be. And so that seems like it's a strange quest for these characters to be on. We wonder, why are they honor bound to go on this seeming wild goose chase? And we also note that Prince Zuko has significant scars around one of his eyes, and we wonder what's going on there. The dynamic of the two of them is interesting too, because while this kid is very, there's some parallels with Sokka in the sense of he takes himself very seriously, he's taking his mission very seriously, but it's also clear that he is not just this all-powerful warrior. In fact, he's frustrated with his uncle for not allowing him to progress in his firebending training faster than he already is. So that's and it's a level of dimension granted to a character who's clearly being set up as a villain. Likewise, his uncle has this two sides of a coin aspect to him as well, where he is alternately just wanting to play this game involving tiles, and just drink tea or eat food, and the idea that he is also this badass firebender who is Zuko's trainer. It's kind of there's some dynamics going on there as well. And so that's what this episode has to do, is mostly just introduce everybody and then get us set up to allow the action to proceed in the next one. And so I invite you all to contribute in the comments if you have thoughts about this episode or about the series as a whole. And I will return next Sunday with episode 2. Talk to you guys tomorrow for 5 more minutes.